My name is Casey Dixon, and at my own wedding, I stood smiling while my brother announced I had a secret life like it was a public service. I learned a long time ago that humiliation is easier to survive when you name it before someone else can weaponize it. It sounds clinical, detached. Maybe that is clinical. I am a forensic financial investigator. Detachment pays my mortgage. Detachment also kept my spine straight in the marble atrium of Hamilton Judicial Hall while 180 guests watched me in a dress that cost more than my first car. Everything about the day had been curated to look inevitable. White orchids climbing glass pedestals, string quartet tucked against the east wall where sunlight made the violins glow. A press-adjacent guest list with all the people who pretend they are not press, city council staff, managing partners, one state senator's chief of staff, 2 former prosecutors, and enough legal heavyweights to make a law school dean sweat through linen. My fiancé, Judge Gabriel Quinn, was known in this city for being incorruptible, infuriatingly fair, and impossible to flatter. Our wedding was being treated like a civic symbol. A union of principle and grace, one invitation addendum had called it, as if we were opening a museum wing. People love narratives they can hold in one hand. In theirs, I was the quiet sister who somehow landed a judge. Nice, pretty, subdued Casey, the one who laughed softly and asked no one for favours. If I had told the room I spent my weekdays tracing shell entities through 3 states and 6 banking networks, half of them would have assumed I meant bookkeeping. If I had told them my employment contracts included confidentiality clauses tight enough to survive federal challenge, they would have looked politely bored. Underestimation buys time. I have always treated it like currency. I stood at the front with my bouquet and watched guests take their seats in slow ripples. Brent and his wife Alyssa were in the second row where family sat by design. Brent looked immaculate in a navy suit and the expression he wore whenever cameras were nearby. Grieving, benevolent, just tired enough to seem burdened by responsibility. He had perfected that face in college when our father died, and everyone decided my brother should be the strong one. I was 22, he was 25, and by the time the casseroles stopped arriving, he had become the golden son in every conversation that mattered. Gabriel squeezed my fingers as the officiant checked the order of ceremony one final time. "You good?" he asked, close enough that only I could hear. "Always," I said. He gave me that look he gives hostile witnesses who may still deserve dignity. Direct, patient, impossible to bluff. We had built us on respect before romance, and that was the only reason I could stand in that room without feeling swallowed by it. He knew I worked difficult cases. He did not know names, targets, operations, timelines. We had boundaries both ethical and practical. I never asked about pending matters before his bench. He never asked what made me come home at midnight with ink on my fingers and silence in my jaw. The officiant welcomed everyone. A wave of phones lifted discreetly, then less discreetly. Somewhere in the middle rows, someone laughed too loud and got shushed. The quartet faded. Breath slowed. Ceremony began. And then Brent stood up. It happened in a way that would have felt almost charming if you didn't know him. He rose with one hand lifted in apology and reached for the reception microphone near the floral arch. Sorry, just 30 seconds, he said, voice warm, brotherly, practiced. I know this is unusual. I just can't let this moment pass without saying something for my little sister. A few guests smiled. Someone clapped once. Alyssa dabbed at her eyes before he had even said a word. I felt my shoulders lock. Brent, I said, still smiling because every camera in the room was pointed at my face. Now isn't... He cut me off with a soft chuckle. Casey, this is from love. Then he nodded toward the AV tech in the back, who looked startled and then compliant as Brent waved a flash drive overhead. Could you throw this up? Quick slideshow. The first image bloomed across the giant projection screen behind us. Grainy, long lens shot. Me stepping out of my car outside a roadside motel near the county line. Baseball cap low, backpack over one shoulder. Murmurs rose, then multiplied. Second image, me in a parking structure at night, passing what looked like a thick envelope to a man in a maintenance uniform. Third, me at a diner booth with 2 men whose faces had been circled in red, like suspects in a cheap true crime show. Fourth, me carrying a lockbox from my trunk. My skin went cold in that specific way it does when facts outpace fear. Not because the photos were fake, because they were real, and because real things can be turned into lies faster than lies. can be disproved. Brent's voice changed, dropped into solemnity. I never wanted to do this publicly. I begged her to stop. He held up his free hand saintly. But I can't stand here and let a judge marry someone living a double life. If this destroys me with my family, fine. I can live with that. I just can't stay silent. In seconds, whispers became verdicts. Guests leaned away from our front row like scandal might spread by proximity. 3 people in the third row had their phones up filming openly now, no pretense. I saw a partner from Gabriel's old firm bend toward another and murmur, eyes flicking between me and the screen. A councilman's wife actually put her hand over her pearl pendant, as if she were shielding it. Alyssa began to cry harder, shoulders shaking in clean little beats that never disrupted her makeup. Brent, Gabriel said, voice carrying without effort. Step away from the mic. But Brent was already in motion, flipping to another slide deck. This one wasn't photos, it was screenshots of texts, old family threads cropped and highlighted. My mother writing, Casey is spiralling again. Brent replying, I'll handle her. A cousin. She always had drama around money. Brent, don't worry, not letting this near the family business. He read selected lines aloud with sympathetic pauses. He joked about my late-night side hustle, and a few people gave shocked, uncertain laughs. Then he produced paper copies from a folder and started handing out bank screenshots like party favours to the nearest rows. See the cash withdrawals, motel nights, unknown transfers. Please tell me this looks normal. He shook his head sadly as if he were disappointed in me for forcing his hand. I watched people I had known for years take the pages. One of Gabriel's senior legal mentors stood and walked to him, not bothering to hide their conversation. You need to halt this now, I heard, low but clear. If there's even a question of impropriety, you cannot proceed. That sentence hit harder than Brent's theatrics. Not because it was cruel, because it was correct in his world. Reputation is currency in legal circles, and suspicion spends instantly. Proof takes months. Gabriel turned to me. His expression was controlled, but I saw the calculation behind it, the judicial triage. Protect the court. Protect due process. Protect me if he could, but not by violating the first 2. Casey, he said very quietly, tell me what I can ask. I met his eyes and tasted iron at the back of my throat. You can ask if I have broken the law, I said. I haven't. It was the only answer I could give without detonating active work. Brent heard enough to pounce. You hear that? Not a denial of the behaviour, just lawyer language. He pivoted toward the crowd, feeding on them. I'm not saying she's some mastermind. I'm saying she's been running around at midnight with cash and strange men while engaged to a sitting judge. Maybe ask yourselves why. He always knew exactly how far to push before people called him cruel. Then he'd step half an inch back and label himself concerned. My hands stayed steady because I made them. 4-count inhale, 6-count exhale. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear. Trauma skills disguised as composure. I had practiced them in surveillance vans and federal conference rooms, in bathrooms after hostile interviews, in childhood kitchens where Brent rewrote reality, and everyone thanked him for clarifying. After Dad died, Brent became the narrator of our family. He told relatives I was too emotional to handle paperwork while I spent nights sorting insurance forms. He accepted praise for holding things together while I paid our mother's utility bills from freelance contracts and said nothing so she could keep her dignity. In school, he presented my economics project as his own because you don't like speaking anyway, and teachers congratulated him for leadership. He wasn't a cartoon villain, he was worse, believable. When I left home and built a career 3 states away, he told people I was cold, ambitious, detached. It was easier for everyone than admitting I had been wiring money home quietly for years. Family mythology is a long con. Everyone gets a role. Mine was the difficult daughter who should be grateful to be tolerated. Now he was running the same script in the most expensive room he could find. He kept stacking little humiliations with surgical precision. Remember when she disappeared for weeks and said it was work travel? He asked, scrolling to photos of me entering airport garages. Remember when she wouldn't tell Mom where she was? More screenshots, more dates, more selective context. Every item individually explainable. collectively poisonous. Then he said the line he had been building toward, and the room shifted from gossip to fear. "This isn't just about Casey making bad choices," he said, turning to Gabriel with performative reluctance. "Your Honor, with respect, what if your court has already been compromised through your bride?" Silence cracked across the atrium. Compromised. In that room, the word had legal mass. It implied bribery, undue influence, ethical breach, recusal, appeals, headlines, professional ruin. It was no longer a brother humiliating a sister. It was an allegation aimed at the judiciary in front of people who could move markets and elections. I saw two guests from Internal Affairs exchange a look and straighten. I saw an assistant US attorney pull out a notebook, instinct before etiquette. I saw the officiant step back from us as if distance could preserve neutrality. I also saw Brent's left thumb tapping against his folder, fast and arrhythmic. The tell from childhood. He was not grieving. He was timing. That was when I understood this had never been about family revenge alone. He hadn't just come to embarrass me. He had come to erase my credibility in the one room where credibility decides who survives. Under the sweetheart table, my knee brushed a matte black envelope I had set there that morning out of habit, precaution, maybe intuition. Brent had mocked it during rehearsal dinner. Casey brought homework to her own wedding, and everyone laughed. My fingertips found the edge of it now. Around me, reputations were recalculating in real time. If I spoke too little, I looked evasive. If I said too much, I could compromise an active operation and hand defense counsel a gift-wrapped motion to suppress. If Gabriel intervened as my fiancé, people would claim bias. If he intervened as a judge, people would call it coercion. Brent had engineered a trap where any wrong move would stain all of us. He lifted the mic again, voice soft with counterfeit sorrow. "I know this is hard to hear, but truth is hard." "No," I thought, watching him. Truth is precise, and precision was the only thing I had left. "Then let's do precise," I said. My voice carried farther than I expected. The quartet had gone silent. HVAC hummed above the marble, and every person with a law degree in the room suddenly looked up like they'd heard a test question. Brent smiled at me with patient pity. "Casey, sweetheart, you don't have to perform right now. You can just tell the truth." I stepped away from the floral arch, bouquet still in my hand, and faced him fully. "Where did you get these?" A blink. "Small, but there. From people who care about you." "That isn't a source, that's a Hallmark card." A few heads turned. One short laugh escaped from somewhere in the back and died immediately. Brent lifted his folder. "Look, I'm not the one with midnight motel meetings." "Answer the question," I said. "Who followed me? Who photographed me? Who gave you financial records that are not yours to possess?" He spread his hands, martyr posture. "So now you're threatening me?" "No, I'm defining scope." Gabriel had moved half a step toward us, not touching me, not touching Brent, an island of restraint in a room built on it. "Mr. Dixon," he said, voice clipped now, judicial cadence flattening every syllable, "you have interrupted a formal proceeding in a government building and introduced allegations implicating judicial ethics and potential criminal conduct. You will provide direct answers." Brent gave a tiny laugh, like Gabriel had just overreacted to a joke. "With respect, Judge, this is a family intervention." "It stopped being family when you said compromise court." That line landed. I saw people in the second and third rows lower their phones by instinct, like someone had just reminded them this was no longer gossip content, but evidence terrain. Brent sensed the shift and compensated fast, pushing paper copies farther down the row. "Everyone here deserves transparency. We're talking about public trust. If my sister's innocent, great. But these records," I cut in, "those are screenshot crops with no originating institution identifiers, no full account paths, no chain of custody declaration, and no certifying affidavit. They are visuals, not records." He stared at me, then turned back to the crowd. "Hear that? More jargon. She always does this when cornered." I could feel my pulse in my gums. Jargon is what people call technical language when they need you not to understand it. Someone from the legal section, partner, maybe litigator, grey tie, murmured, "She's not wrong." Brent swung to another angle. "Fine, let's keep it simple. Casey, Did you or did you not meet unknown men in parking structures and motels while engaged to Judge Quinn? There it was, yes or no trap, calibrated for viral clips. Yes, I said, and the room inhaled. And every one of those meetings was documented. The inhale broke into whispers again. Brent pounced before anyone could process the second half. Thank you. That's all we needed. No, I said. You needed me to stop at yes. Alyssa rose halfway from her chair, clutching a tissue. Casey, we begged you to get help. We didn't want this to happen today. Theatrical tremor. Moist eyes, dry mascara. She was better at this than she used to be. I looked at her, then at Brent. You two rehearsed this. Brent scoffed. You think everything is a conspiracy. I think this slideshow has transition effects. A couple of younger associates in the back exchanged glances. One almost smiled, despite herself. Brent noticed and his jaw tightened. From the left aisle, Hamilton Hall's events director approached with 2 security officers, hanging back uncertainly, waiting for a cue from someone with authority. She looked directly at Gabriel. Judge Quinn, should we clear the room? Before he could answer, one of his former mentors stood again. Gabriel, you need to suspend immediately. Anything else is a disaster. I watched Gabriel absorb that and watched him not react. This was why people feared and trusted him in equal measure. He did not make decisions to soothe panic. My phone, tucked in the folds of my dress, vibrated against my thigh. Once, twice, then a third time in rapid succession. Emergency pattern from a restricted contact group that almost never used direct call in active windows. My blood cooled another degree. If my team was calling right now, they were watching this. Brent followed my glance downward and smiled without moving his mouth. Busy morning? I understood then that his attack had 2 audiences, the room and whoever might be forced to respond to this breach publicly. He wanted me frantic, sloppy, discredited. He wanted me to say one protected name in front of 24 people who billed by the hour and 3 people who sold stories for influence. And somewhere behind his confidence was fear, because he kept tapping that left thumb. I took 1 step toward him. You exposed faces on that screen. Faces of men meeting my sister in seedy parking decks, yes. Did you blur anything before projecting? He frowned, impatient. Why would I blur evidence? Because if those are who I know they are, you may have just burned confidential sources in an active corruption probe. Silence dropped like weight. For the first time, Brent's expression fractured. Don't do that. Don't pretend this is some government mission. I don't pretend, I said. I document. He barked a laugh that sounded too loud. Sure, you're Jason Bourne with spreadsheets. Brent, Gabriel said, put the mic down. No. Brent turned in a slow circle so everyone could see his profile. His sorrow, his courage. No. Because this is what she does, intimidates, confuses, hides behind confidential and technical. Ask why she withdrew cash. Ask why she lied to Mom about where she was. Ask why my company's name keeps showing up when she gets cagey. The last sentence came out too fast and he seemed to hear it a beat late. A few people did too. Eyes sharpened. I filed it. From the 4th row, Assistant U.S. Attorney Lena Cho stood. She was off-duty in a pale green dress and still managed to look like she was cross-examining gravity. Mr. Dixon, she said, did you just represent that your company appears in whatever activity you're accusing your sister of? Brent recovered quickly. I'm saying she's obsessed with my business, always has been. Not what you said. A murmur moved like wind through reeds. Brent tried to bulldoze over it. I said what any protective brother would say. Protective brothers usually don't bring a projector, Cho replied. He ignored her and pointed at me. Tell them about your late-night cash drops. Tell them why you can't explain anything without permission from people no one can verify. I almost answered from muscle memory. Deny, minimize, redirect to counsel. But that would play directly into his frame. The story he was selling required me to look either guilty or helpless. Quiet sister. Unstable sister. Managed sister. I set my bouquet on the nearest chair. Casey, Gabriel said softly, just to me, if you need this paused, I can clear the room and hold the record. My phone vibrated again. Then Gabriel's did. He glanced at the screen and I watched his pupils narrow. He didn't read it out loud. He didn't need to. Somebody with standing had just flagged this event in real time. Complications stacked fast after that. 2 reporters I hadn't recognised at the back had already moved into the side aisle with their phones chest high, pretending not to film. A family court judge from County District was whispering into his sleeve mic to someone outside. One of the security officers got a call and answered with, "Yes, sir, we are containing," while looking directly at Brent's projection screen. Then my mother stood up. She had stayed silent until then. Hands folded around her clutch so tightly her knuckles blanched. Now she looked smaller than her dress, voice thin but clear. "Casey, please," she said. "If there's something wrong, just tell us. We can help." Help. The same word used when they wanted confession, not context. "Mom," I said carefully. "Sit down." Her face crumpled. Brent pivoted instantly, arm around her shoulders, guardian son returning to type. "See? She can't even reassure her own mother." "Brent," I said, "move away from her." His smile sharpened. "Or what?" "Or I finally stop protecting you," I thought. A side door opened and Court-Martial Denton stepped in with 2 uniformed deputies. He took in the screen, the papers in guests' laps, the phones, and his expression became granite. "Judge Quinn," he called. "Need instruction?" Every eye moved to Gabriel. He took a breath. "Hold positions. No one exits until we determine evidentiary status." He looked at the crowd. "This is now a potential integrity event involving court personnel, allegations of corruption, and unauthorized disclosure of potentially protected materials. I am instructing all attendees to preserve devices and refrain from deleting or transmitting files." The room reacted exactly as guilty and innocent people always do. Half froze, half reached for their pockets. Brent raised both hands. "Wow. Martial law at a wedding. Good call, Your Honor." Gabriel didn't look at him. "Mr. Dixon, this is your final warning. Cease speaking." Brent leaned toward the microphone anyway. "What are you afraid she'll say?" I moved before he could continue. I bent, reached beneath the sweetheart table and pulled out the matte black envelope. The motion was small, but it caught attention like a dropped glass. Brent's mouth twitched. He remembered mocking it, the little work prop his obsessive sister couldn't leave at home. I walked to the podium and set the envelope on the wood with deliberate care. The seal strip faced outward. Date, time, initials. Not dramatic, procedural. "Before anyone calls removal," I said, "I am requesting exactly 60 seconds. Denton looked to Gabriel. Gabriel looked to me. "You understand the risk," he said quietly. "Yes." "Then 60. I turned to the room. "You are looking at photos of me entering motels, parking structures, and roadside diners. Those meetings were sanctioned debriefs tied to a multi-agency financial corruption task force. The cash envelopes shown were controlled operational funds, logged, signed, and reconciled under evidentiary protocol. The men circled in red are confidential informants or cooperating intermediaries connected to shell company networks." The atrium had gone so quiet I could hear someone's bracelet tap against a glass. I continued. "I cannot disclose names in open forum. I cannot disclose docket numbers sealed under protective order. I can disclose one fact because it is already in the materials Mr. Dixon chose to broadcast. Brent Dixon Construction Group appears in every trace chain represented in those images." Brent lurched forward. "That is a lie." I held his gaze. "You just authenticated my source set by publishing your own derivative surveillance compilation." He looked genuinely lost for half a second. He hadn't expected language he didn't control. I opened the envelope and removed a single document packet, clipped with red tabs. "This is a limited release verification letter, executed this morning for contingency disclosure if my status was publicly challenged in a manner threatening operation integrity. It confirms my role designation, clearance scope, and authorization class. Redactions remain. Validation code is visible." I extended it toward Court-Martial Denton, not toward any guest, not toward Gabriel. Chain of custody. Denton took it with both hands like it might explode. Brent shook his head violently. No, this is forged. She makes fake things for a living." "Forensics does not mean forgery," I said. A dry voice cut across him from the third row. "No, it means your day just got expensive." Lena Cho again. Gabriel stepped forward then, and the room changed with him. He removed his boutonniere and set it beside my bouquet, a quiet line between groom and judge. When he spoke, it was into the same microphone Brent had used, but the tone was record grade. "For clarity and preservation," he said, "I am speaking not as fiancé, but as an officer of the court, and recognition witness to identity and professional standing." He glanced once at Denton, who gave a tight nod over the verification packet. "Ms. Casey Dixon is the lead forensic financial specialist attached by interagency appointment to the State Federal Judicial Corruption Task Force operating under sealed authority. Her sworn affidavits initiated inquiry threads currently assigned to a colleague's docket, not mine. I have had no access to protected case content beyond conflict screen necessity." The words hit like gavel strikes. People stopped pretending to be casual. Gabriel continued, each clause clean and neutral. "Materials displayed moments ago include potential unauthorized surveillance of a protected investigator, possible exposure of confidential informants, and apparent manipulation of financial imagery absent authentication. Mr. Dixon's public presentation may constitute corroboration of evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and obstruction-related conduct. This scene is now preserved." Brent backed up a step as if the floor had shifted under him. "You can't do that. You can't just declare me guilty because she—" "No one declared guilt," Gabriel said. "I declared process." Denton signalled his deputies. One moved toward the AV station. Another began photographing the projector screen, the flash drive in Brent's hand, the paper copies in guest laps. A low rustle moved through the room as people realised they were no longer audience. They were part of a record, Alyssa whispered. "Brent, stop talking." For once, he listened. My 60 seconds had ended, but the axis of the room had already turned. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been a bride in satin trying not to shake. Now I was standing beside a podium with red-tabbed documents while court deputies logged my brother's slideshow as potential criminal evidence. Brent stared at me with naked hatred and something newer underneath it. Fear. Fear. It flashed across Brent's face and vanished so quickly most people missed it. I didn't. I'd watched him improvise since we were children. Fear was always his cue to go bigger. He straightened his tie, lifted his chin, and laughed into the charged silence. "Great performance," he said to me. "Truly, very Homeland. But if we're preserving scenes, preserve this too." He pulled a second phone from his inside pocket and held it up. On the screen was a live feed of the atrium, me at the podium, Gabriel by the mic, deputies moving through the rows. 3 platforms, Brent said, voice climbing with adrenaline. 37,000 views and counting. So congratulations, Casey. Your sealed little world is public now. The room erupted. Not loud, worse, fractured. People turned to each other in sharp whispers, checking their own phones, checking whether they had been filmed, whether their names were tagged. "Device!" Court Marshal Denton snapped, extending his hand. Brent tucked the phone behind his back. "Careful. If this stream drops, auto-release sends the full archive to 12 contacts. Journalists, defense counsel, ethics boards. You want to seize it, but you won't stop it." That got everyone's attention. Even the guests who had treated this like entertainment finally looked afraid. Gabriel spoke without raising his voice. "Mr. Dixon, if you have configured a dead man release for potentially protected investigative materials, you're increasing your exposure every second you continue." Brent smiled with all his teeth. "Then maybe stop threatening me and start asking why your fiancée targeted my company." "You don't get to set terms," I said. He turned to the crowd, performing reason. "Do I, though? Because from where I'm standing, she just claimed covert authority with redacted paper and no names. And now a judge she's sleeping with validates it on the spot." Gasps. That one landed exactly where he wanted. Optics, bias, conflict. In the 4th row, a Bar Association ethics chair I'd met once at a fundraiser stood slowly and said, "Judge Quinn, for your protection and hers, I advise recusal from any further directive in this room." Brent pointed at him like he'd won something. "Thank you." Finally, Gabriel held the chair's gaze. "Noted." Then he turned to Denton. "Marshal, command shifts to building incident protocol with deputy legal oversight. I remain as witness only unless immediate safety requires intervention." He had just cut his own authority in front of everyone to protect process. It was the right call. It also left me with less cover. Brent saw that too. "There we go," he said. "Now we can talk like adults." A deputy moved to secure the AV table. Brent barked, "Don't touch that laptop." and the AV tech flinched backward like he'd been slapped. "Why?" Denton asked. "Because it isn't mine," Brent said. "It belongs to my consultant. She left 10 minutes ago." My stomach dropped. "Name," Denton said. Brent shrugged. "Didn't catch it. Blonde, glasses, efficient." He was lying, but if a third party had walked out with source files while we were contained in here, containment had already failed. My secure app chimed once, a high-priority text-only alert from Task Force channel. "Breach vector confirmed. Public stream captured. Do not identify sources. Stand by." I read it and felt the air thin. Brent's thumb started tapping again. He was waiting for another shoe to drop, and this one wasn't in the room yet. A deputy collected the paper screenshots from guests. One man in the second row hesitated before surrendering his copy, then folded it once and handed it over with 2 fingers, like it might stain him. Denton's team photographed every page in place before bagging them. A woman from City Permitting whispered to her husband, "If his firm is in there, we're all subpoenaed." He whispered back, "Don't say that out loud." Alyssa was crying again, but now she kept glancing toward the doors. Denton's radio crackled. He listened, expression hardening. "Sir, we have confirmation. One unidentified female exited West Corridor at 11:42 carrying a silver drive case. Vehicle departed before lockdown." Brent looked at me. "That your witness intimidation too?" I ignored him and looked at Denton. "Pull garage cameras and plate reads from 11:30 to 11:50. Flag for facial match against procurement contractors tied to Dixon Construction and affiliated non-profits." Brent scoffed. "Hear that? She's running search warrants at her wedding." "It's called triage," I said. "Try it sometime." He stepped closer, voice lowered so only we could hear. "You think this hurts me? You just outed yourself on a sealed task force in front of half the city. Defense attorneys are already drafting motions with your name, in all caps." He wasn't wrong. If he succeeded, I didn't just lose a wedding day. I lost operational credibility, source trust, maybe my clearance. Informants I'd spent years convincing to talk would vanish, or worse. Cases built on layered corroboration could be painted as romantic contamination because of Gabriel and me. Appeals courts don't care how unfair a narrative is if procedure got muddy enough to litigate. Everything I had built ran on one commodity: trust that I would protect people who took risks to tell the truth. Brent had just lit a match in that vault. The next blow came in a whisper from my phone. "Asset 14, missed check-in. Last known, North Lot, Hamilton Perimeter." I read it twice because my brain rejected the words. Asset 14 was one of the men from Brent's slideshow, the maintenance worker from the parking structure image. Real name unknown to most of us. That was the point. He checked in every 90 minutes when in active risk windows. He had missed. I walked 3 steps toward the side aisle before a deputy blocked me with his arm. "Ma'am, we need everyone in place." "I need a secure line now," I said. Denton read my face and nodded once. "Library anteroom, escort." As I moved, my mother reached for my wrist. "Casey, where are you going? Don't leave like this." I stopped without turning. "Mum, I need you to sit down and not speak to anyone about anything you saw." Her fingers loosened. In the anteroom, I shut the door and answered the incoming call on encrypted audio. Agent Navarro didn't waste greeting. What did he release? Still images, bank crops, live stream. Unknown external courier removed a drive. Damn it. Paper shuffled on his end, voices in background. "We're burning meeting points. 2 cooperators already dark. You are ordered no further public statements. Repeat, none." I already made one to stop source exposure. "I know, we saw it. Might have bought us minutes, not much more." My throat tightened. "Asset 14, missed check-in. Confirmed, team is canvassing. Could be spooked, could be grabbed, could be dead. We don't know yet." The word dead landed flat and heavy. Navarro kept going, clipped and tired. "Internal review triggered automatically due public disclosure by named specialist. Your access is suspended pending emergency assessment." For a second I thought I'd misheard. Suspended? Temporary procedure. Without access I can't help you triage my own files. Without access we reduce contamination arguments when defense says your relationship to a sitting judge tainted operations. I pressed fingers to my eyes until light sparked behind them. So he gets exactly what he wanted. Maybe, maybe not. Listen to me. This is containment, not punishment. but you're out of channel until I clear you. My phone pinged while he spoke. I opened the secure app with numb hands. Credentials revoked. TF7//status. Inactive. Pending OIG review. Years of work, one red banner. Navarro softened, barely. Casey, go to ground emotionally. Don't freelance. Let us work. The call ended. I stood alone in a room with law books and floral arrangements and felt something inside me split cleanly down the middle. Investigator on one side, bride on the other, both suddenly unemployed. When I came back into the atrium, the atmosphere had changed from chaos to procedure. Deputies had taped off the AV area. Guests were being logged by name and seat. A court reporter had arrived and was setting stenotype on a side table, like this had always been. A hearing, not a wedding. Brent sat in a chair near the front, not cuffed, flanked by two deputies. He looked almost relaxed. He looked up when he saw me. Everything okay with your spy friends? I kept walking. Alyssa stood and hissed, You did this. You're destroying this family. I stopped just long enough to meet her eyes. No, I stopped covering for it. Then my knees threatened to fold, and that terrified me more than Brent ever had. I found the edge of a marble column and put one palm flat against it until the tremor passed. Gabriel was across the room with Denton and an older woman in a charcoal suit I recognized from Judicial Conduct Council. He looked carved from control, but his shoulders were set too high. He hadn't looked at me since I returned. Not because he didn't want to, because if he did, it might show. I had just been suspended from the case that defined my adult life. One source was missing. A second could be compromised. The man I loved was now under ethics observation at his own wedding. And Brent, somehow, was still talking. Gabriel. He had spent 15 years training himself out of visible panic. As a junior prosecutor, he learned that fear in the eyes of the state can acquit a liar. As a judge, he learned that certainty can become arrogance if you don't interrogate it daily. So he built rituals. Square the papers, loosen the jaw, breathe from the diaphragm, ask the narrow question first. None of those rituals prepared him for seeing Casey return from a side room looking like she had lost blood. Judicial Conduct Counsel Mara Levin stood beside him, speaking in low, relentless bullets. You did the right thing, shift in command. You cannot issue further legal determinations. Opposing counsel in every sensitive matter will test appearance of impartiality after this. You need contemporaneous notes now, while memory is fresh. He nodded because she was right. She kept going. If Ms. Dixon is attached to an active task force, your relationship will be examined for conflict screen adequacy. You may be asked to recuse from categories, not just cases, possibly temporary reassignment pending review. Understood. Do you? He finally looked at her. Yes. What he didn't say. I am less afraid of reassignment than I am of failing her in public. Levin touched his sleeve, brief and human. You cannot be her advocate and the court symbol at the same time. Pick process. It's the only way to protect both. He closed his eyes for half a second and saw another room, another year, his first homicide trial. Witness room B, a young mother shaking so hard she couldn't hold the paper cup he'd given her. He had promised her she would be protected after testimony. 2 weeks later, her address leaked through a clerical error upstream of his desk. She survived. Her brother didn't. He had never forgiven himself for believing good intent was protection. Now he watched Casey, who trusted process because she had to, standing in the blast radius of a man who weaponized intimacy. He wanted to cross the floor, take her face in his hands, and say, I am here, I am here, I am here. Instead, he asked a deputy for a legal pad. When he reached her, he stopped at a distance that cameras could not misread. Talk to me, he said softly. Her laugh was one sharp exhale. I got suspended. His chest tightened. Temporary? Pending review. Asset 14 missed check-in. He absorbed that, eyes dropping for a second as if he could physically hold the implications down. I'm sorry. I know you are. He hesitated. I need to tell you something before this gets worse. She waited. I am scared, he said, the words rougher than he intended. Not of scandal, of making the wrong procedural choice and getting someone hurt because I wanted to protect you personally. Her expression shifted. Pain, recognition. You think distance keeps me safer. I think blurred lines kill cases, and sometimes people. He had never said that out loud to her, maybe to anyone. I can't lose the court, he said quietly, and I can't lose you. Today may force one of those into the line of fire. For the first time since Brent stood up, his voice trembled. Just once. Casey stepped closer, then stopped herself before touching him. Then don't choose me over process, she said. Choose truth over spectacle. I can live with that. He swallowed. Can you? She looked toward Brent, toward the taped-off screen, toward the room full of watchers and note-takers. Ask me in an hour. Back in my skin, in my body, in my wedding dress that suddenly felt like costume armor, I watched the next wave hit. Brent's attorney arrived. He was younger than I expected. Expensive suit, emergency litigation face. He moved straight to Denton with a printed notice and a tablet. Counsel for Mr. Brent Dixon. My client invokes right to counsel, declines further questioning, and requests immediate medical evaluation due acute distress. Brent nodded weakly on cue. The attorney raised his voice just enough for nearby rows to hear. Additionally, we are preserving a formal complaint against Judge Quinn for coercive misuse of judicial stature and against Ms. Dixon for defamatory false attribution tied to sealed matters she cannot lawfully discuss. Denton took the notice without expression. Noted. Also, the attorney said, before you seize additional devices, you should know my client received a recording this morning from a current employee of Dixon Construction, indicating Ms. Dixon solicited fabricated evidence to frame him. We'll be submitting to state investigators. The room snapped to attention like a wire pulled taut. I felt cold spread across my back. Fabricated evidence. It was absurd and strategically lethal. Defense narratives don't need truth at first, they need noise. Brent looked at me over his lawyer's shoulder and mouthed, "Told you." Levin stepped toward Gabriel, alarm finally showing. "Do not respond," she whispered. Too late for quiet. One of the reporters at the back said, audible now, "Judge, did your fiancé weaponize an active investigation against family?" Denton barked, "No press questions." The attorney lifted the tablet. For preservation and safety, I request this recording be entered now with neutral witnesses present. Denied pending chain verification, Denton said. Brent surged up from his chair anyway. Play it. If she's so precise, play it. Deputies pushed him back down. Alyssa started sobbing again, louder, pleading at no one and everyone. Please, just let the truth out. My phone vibrated with a standard network call, unknown number, then again. Then a text from a blocked contact. Check the service corridor. He left you a gift. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I turned toward the west corridor instinctively, the same one the unidentified woman had used to exit, with the silver case. A deputy at that door was suddenly speaking urgently into his radio. Marshal, he called, voice cracking, we have a package in the service hall, unattended, black case labelled for the bride. The room froze. Denton's hand went up, commanding stillness. Nobody moves. Brent stopped tapping his thumb and smiled. And smiled. Everybody stay exactly where you are, Denton said. His command voice cut through the panic. Deputy Hall, West Corridor hard seal. Nobody touches that package. Guests were half standing, half sitting, trapped between instinct and instruction. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, Bomb! And someone else started to cry quietly. Brent lifted his cuffed-not-cuffed hands in a shrug. A gift for the bride. Bit dramatic, no? I watched his face, not the hallway. No shock, no confusion, no glance to Alyssa for reassurance, just anticipation. Marshal, I said, I need eyes on it before EOD arrives. Denton didn't move. Negative. Please listen carefully, I said, keeping my voice level. If that case contains a trigger tied to his livestream relay, blind jamming could auto-release protected files. If it's what I think it is, we need controlled network capture first. Brent's attorney snapped. She is not in command here. No, I said. I'm the one he built this for. Denton's jaw tightened. Then he pointed at a deputy. Pull corridor cam on tablet. No one approaches. We huddled around the live feed. Black service hallway, fluorescent wash, stainless cart, and on top of it, a hard-sided black case with a white gift label, for the bride. Not a bomb satchel, not random luggage, a court evidence transport case. I knew the model instantly, same brand my team used for digital seizures. Zoom the latch, I said. Pixelation resolved into a tamper seal strip with partial numbers. Not enough for full read, enough to see it had been removed and replaced. Sloppy. I exhaled once. He wants it opened in front of everyone. Brent called from his chair, maybe because truth likes daylight. I ignored him. Marshall, request bomb squad and cyber response, but we can start a passive capture protocol now. Air-gapped machine only, no external network, mirrored output to projector so chain is transparent. Denton studied me for 2 beats that felt like 20. Then, do it. Brent's smile slipped. EOD cleared the case 12 minutes later. No explosive compound, no pressure trigger. Inside were 3 items sealed in separate bags: a silver external drive, a cheap burner phone with a countdown app running, and a cream envelope addressed in block letters. Play this and end her lies. The atrium was now fully procedural. Deputies at every exit, court reporter transcribing, devices catalogued, guests pale and silent, watching the wedding become a hearing. Denton held up the envelope with gloved hands. Counsel present. Witnesses present. We proceed under evidence preservation. Brent's attorney stepped forward. My client requests immediate playback of the employee recording. Your client requests a lot, Denton said. I stepped to the podium again. I'll conduct technical authentication in plain language. Live. With dual recording. If I cannot verify source integrity, nothing plays as proof. The attorney laughed once. Convenient. Transparent, I corrected. I turned to Brent. You wanted adults talking? Stand by your accusation now. On record. He leaned forward, eyes bright with the old cruelty. Gladly. My sister used her connections to target my company. She fabricated evidence. I have a whistleblower recording proving it. Good, I said. Keep that sentence. A deputy opened the envelope. Inside, 1 USB stick and a typed transcript with highlighted lines. Allegedly my voice saying, we can make the numbers tell whatever story we need. There was a ripple in the room. People love a quote. I plugged the USB into the air-gapped forensic laptop from my black envelope, projected the screen and narrated each click. First principle, I said. File names are costumes, metadata is bones. I opened properties. Audio file created today at 5:12 a.m. exported 3 times. Editing software tag present. Brent's attorney jumped in. Any competent person can alter metadata. Correct, I said, which is why we don't stop there. I ran a hash comparison against the same file embedded on the burner phone. Different hash values. Not an original, we have at least 2 versions. I highlighted waveform anomalies on screen. See these repeated noise floors? Identical ambient loop every 14 seconds. Natural room tone doesn't tile perfectly. Synthetic bed. A woman in the back, Corporate Compliance Counsel, murmured, Deepfake splice. I clicked again. Now voice print markers. I split channels and overlaid my known control sample from a public panel interview. My consonant decay is clipped here, but in this file it's smoothed. Algorithmic artifact. Also the phrase make the numbers tell whatever story does not match my natural prosody. I'd say trace or reconcile, not make tell. Whoever wrote this understands movies, not forensics. Brent said loudly, or you're rehearsed. I looked straight at him. Absolutely. Rehearsed in not lying. I opened the drive next. Directory tree bloomed on the projector. Wedding _drop. Casey _surveil. Permit _chains. Do not send yet. A collective inhale moved through the room. Whoever assembled this likes folders, I said. Lucky for us, folder habits leak identity. I right-clicked one image. Authoring device ID maps to a workstation registered to Dixon Construction Group. Permit Office Annex subnet. Another file, same. Another, same. Brent's attorney cut in, sharper now. Objection to characterization. She has no foundation to authenticate alleged device ownership. Foundation incoming. I opened embedded sync logs. User token, BDIX-admin2. Backup destination, Brent D _personal cloud. Timestamp overlap with his publicly displayed live stream device, by 2 minutes. All eyes moved to Brent's second phone in evidence view. He stood so fast his chair tipped backward. That proves nothing. It proves your concerned brother slideshow was assembled on corporate infrastructure tied to your credentials, I said. Now for motive. I opened a folder called vnotes_raw. Brent lunged. Don't you dare! He got 2 steps before Deputy Hall caught his arm and pinned him against a column. Play it, I said. A scratchy voice filled the atrium. Unmistakable. Brent, Rico, I don't care how you get it. Follow her. Motel, parking deck, whatever. I need dirt before the wedding. Second clip. Brent, if the judge calls security, go live. Make it public. Public means panic. Third. Brent, lower, frantic. If she talks task force, use the package. Tell them she planted evidence. You hear me? Flip the story. No one moved. Even the quartet players in the corner stood frozen with their instruments at their sides. Brent thrashed against the deputy. Edited. AI, she manufactured. Then unlock your phone and produce your original note app, I said. He spat a laugh. Not without counsel. Exactly. His attorney stepped in front of him, sweating now. My client invokes Fifth Amendment rights. No further statements. I nodded. Wise. I clicked to the final folder and put up a simple flowchart I had built months earlier for internal briefing. Shell nonprofits, municipal permit approvals, subcontractor kickbacks, cash recycling routes. One node was highlighted in red, Dixon Community Renewal Initiative. Another, Dixon Construction Group. Here is what he tried to bury under family drama, I said to the room, to the camera logs, to myself. This wasn't a sibling meltdown, this was preemptive witness intimidation, timed to discredit an investigator and contaminate judicial optics. The same entities in his permit network appear in controlled fund pathways from my so-called secret life photos. I pointed at each line as I spoke. Plain, slow, undeniable. He surveilled me to expose sources. He manipulated media to force narrative before evidence. He planted forged audio to frame me. He threatened dead man release to obstruct response. I turned back to Brent. Repeat your accusation now. He stared at me, face blotched red, breath ragged. For the first time in my life, he had no script. Then he screamed and tore free enough to launch toward the laptop. Deputies hit him mid-stride. He slammed to the marble, shouting obscenities, kicking, spitting my name like it was poison. Alyssa sobbed, Brent, stop, stop. But she didn't move to help him. Her eyes were fixed on the flowchart like she'd never seen it before, and suddenly recognized every line. Denton stepped to the mic. Brent Dixon, you are being detained pending charges including suspected witness intimidation, evidence tampering, obstruction-related conduct, and unlawful surveillance. Additional charges subject to prosecutorial review. Cold metal clicked. Handcuffs. The same room that had watched him perform as my saviour watched him hauled upright, suit wrinkled, tie half off, rage replacing charm in raw strips. He twisted once more to glare at me. You think you won? I met his stare. No, I think you finally got documented. They didn't take him out quietly. Even in cuffs, Brent tried to keep audience control. This is retaliation! He shouted as deputies guided him toward the side exit. She's sleeping with a judge! This whole city is crooked! His attorney kept pace, barking, Do not answer, Brent. Do not. And then, to Denton, You're overreaching. We will challenge every seizure. You should, Denton said, in court. At the doorway, Brent planted his feet and looked back at our mother. Mom, tell them she lies. Tell them she always lies. My mother stood very still, clutch crushed in both hands, her lips parted, closed, opened again. No, she said, barely above a whisper. He blinked. She drew one shaking breath and said it louder. No, Brent! Something in his face collapsed then. Not guilt, not remorse. Entitlement denied. Deputies moved him through the door. Alyssa tried to follow, but a female investigator intercepted her with a gentle hand. Mrs. Dixon, we need a statement about the source files and your role in presentation prep. I just made slides, she stammered. Then you should sit. She sat. The room released noise in fragments. Exhalations, murmurs, a glass clinking as someone set it down too hard. One of the reporters whispered into her phone, Update your headline now. Denton continued scene control. All attendees remain until individual release. You may be contacted for sworn statements. Do not publish or forward any media captured here. Lena Cho appeared beside me with 2 bottled waters and handed me one without comment. Her gaze flicked to the projector where my flowchart still glowed. "Nice foundation," she said quietly. "My access is suspended," I replied. "For now." As if summoned, my secure app buzzed. I braced for another red banner and opened it. Asset 14, located. Alive. In protective hold. My knees nearly gave out from sheer relief. Another ping followed from Navarro. Suspension status under review. Hold position. Good work containing live vector. Good work felt obscene and perfect at the same time. I stared at the words until they blurred. Across the atrium, Gabriel stood near the marble staircase speaking with Conduct Counsel Levin and an investigator I recognized from state-level public corruption. He looked up once. Our eyes met. He didn't come to me. I didn't go to him. Not yet, because the crisis wasn't fully over. It had just changed shape. By late afternoon, the atrium looked like the aftermath of a storm, and a hearing had a baby. Half-wilted orchids, evidence markers, abandoned place cards, legal pads stacked where centerpieces had been. Guest releases happened in waves. Some avoided my eyes, some offered brittle sympathy. A few surprised me. The grey-tie litigator who'd muttered earlier paused in front of me and said, "I judged too fast. I'm sorry." Then he left before I could answer. My mother waited until almost everyone was gone. She approached with both hands visible, like she was entering skittish animal territory. "I should have asked you," she said, years ago, "about everything." I didn't let her off easy. "You preferred the version where I was difficult. It cost less." She flinched. "I know." We stood in that truth without hugging. It was more honest than comfort. When she left, I went to the bridal suite and sat on the edge of a velvet bench, still covered in hairspray glitter and tissue paper. My shoes were gone. I didn't remember taking them off. My dress had a grey smear at the hem from where Brent hit the floor. I laughed once, then cried. Quietly, efficiently, shoulders shaking but breath controlled, like even my grief had learned procedure. A soft knock. Gabriel entered and closed the door behind him. No audience. No microphones, just us, reflected dimly in the mirror bulbs. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I wanted to cross the room when they cuffed him. I wanted to hold you, and damn the optics." I wiped my face with the heel of my hand. "I wanted you to, and I would have hated myself if you did." He crouched in front of me, not touching. "Mara says I'll likely be reviewed for conflict categories." "Navarro suspended me," he nodded. "I heard." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of Brent, of the mess he made sticking to every case I touched." His mouth tightened. "I am too." The honesty steadied me more than reassurance could have. He took a breath, looked down, then back up. "Casey, I need to say this clearly. I do not love you because you are composed. I love you because when everything broke today, you chose truth with a target on your back. You didn't ask me to save you. You asked me to stand in process. That is the bravest thing I've seen in my life." My throat closed. "You looked at me like I was evidence." "I know." Pain crossed his face. I hated it. But I was trying not to repeat an old failure. I once promised someone the system would protect her if we did everything right. She buried her brother because we missed one leak. Since then, I have trusted procedure more than instinct. Today, instinct was you. I reached for his hand then, and he let me. "I don't need rescue," I said, "but I need partnership, even when it's ugly." He squeezed my fingers. "Then hear mine. I am not interested in a pristine love story for public consumption. I am interested in a real one with rules, boundaries, hard conversations, and your shoes kicked under my desk because you work too late." A laugh escaped me through leftover tears. He smiled, small and wrecked. "Will you still marry me today, even if it's in a records chamber with bad lighting and 3 witnesses who smell like toner?" I leaned forward until our foreheads touched. "Yes, but I'm keeping the dress." "Good," he whispered. "I like this dress. It terrifies liars." They found us a smaller chamber on the 3rd floor, usually used for administrative swearing-ins. Fluorescent lights, oak table, state seal on the wall slightly crooked. Perfect. Present, Lena Cho, Court Marshal Denton, and Gabriel's older mentor, now chastened and oddly tender. Conduct Council. Levin stood at the back as observer, arms folded, expression unreadable but less severe. No quartet, no projector, no Brent. The officiant from earlier had gone home in shock, so a senior judge from Civil Division, Judge Marisol Vega, stepped in. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "I've had quieter Tuesdays." "Same, why not?" I said. Paperwork was checked twice, then a third time because my hands were still shaking, and I signed one line of fraction outside the box. Denton pretended not to notice. Judge Vega began, voice warm and practical. "Marriage licenses do not ask whether the day was easy. They ask whether consent is clear, whether witnesses stand, and whether two people understand what they are entering." Gabriel and I faced each other. No arch, no petals, just fluorescent hum and the smell of copied paper. "Casey," he said, vows abandoned for truth, "I vow to never confuse your silence with agreement. I vow to ask, not assume. I vow to protect boundaries that protect us both, even when they are inconvenient. I vow that when process demands distance, love will not." I swallowed hard. "Gabriel, I vow to tell you when I'm afraid before it calcifies into control. I vow to let you witness me, not just the competent version of me. I vow to stand beside your ethics, not around them. And I vow that no room, no family script, no public narrative gets to shrink me again." Judge Vega smiled like she had seen too many performative vows in her life, and was grateful for these. "Rings?" We exchanged them. Mine almost slipped because my fingers were cold. He caught it, and we both laughed. "By the authority vested in me by the state," she said, signing with a decisive flourish, "I pronounce you married, and Ms. Dixon, thank you for defending the court as fiercely as you defended yourself." That broke me in the best way. I cried openly this time when Gabriel kissed me, brief and reverent and ours. No applause thundered, just three witnesses clapping softly and Denton clearing his throat like he had allergies. It was enough. It was everything. 4 months later, I sat in courtroom 4C wearing navy instead of white, watching Brent stand for plea. He looked smaller without an audience. The charisma had drained, leaving a man in an ill-fitting suit reading from a script his attorney had negotiated, word by word. To count 1, wire fraud, guilty. To count 3, witness intimidation, guilty. To count 5, evidence tampering, guilty. His voice cracked on the third guilty. He didn't look at me. Alyssa sat 2 rows ahead, hands wrapped around a paper cup she never drank from. She had taken a cooperation deal. She cried less now, and when she did, it looked less curated. Judge Vega presided. Gabriel was nowhere near the case file by design. Conflict screens held. My own clearance had been reinstated after review with a narrower interface and an even tighter firewall around my assignments. Procedure had teeth. We lived with them. After the plea, in the hallway, my mother approached carrying a foil-covered dish because she is still from the generation that believes apology can be plated. "I made lemon bars," she said, eyes uncertain. I took the container. "Thank you." She nodded toward the courtroom doors. "I'm in therapy," she blurted, as if confessing to a crime. "For patterns," I blinked. "Okay. I don't expect forgiveness on schedule." She lifted her chin in a small, brave way. "I just don't want to lie anymore." I believed her enough to answer honestly. "Then don't." We stood there in the courthouse corridor, not fixed, not broken beyond repair either, just real. That evening at home, Gabriel found me at the kitchen island with 3 binders open and a black evidence envelope beside my laptop like an old talisman. He set 2 mugs down, tea, and a procedural question. "Proceed." He leaned on the counter. "Is this envelope ever retiring?" I looked at it, at the matte surface scuffed from one catastrophic wedding day. "No, but it might become decorative," he smiled. "Frame it. Too dramatic." "Shadowbox, then." I laughed and closed the binder. He came around behind me, arms warm around my shoulders, chin against my hair. My phone buzzed with a message from a junior analyst I mentor. "Big hearing tomorrow. Any advice?" I'm terrified I'll freeze if challenged in public. I typed back, "Name what's happening before someone names it for you. Then be precise." I hit send and set the phone down. In the reflection of the dark kitchen window, I saw us. No marble atrium, no cameras, no curated narrative, just two people in soft clothes, tired, intact. At my wedding, my brother took a microphone to expose my secret life. Now, when I step into any room and take the mic first, there are no secrets left for cowards to weaponize.